So I just want to welcome all of our attendees to this session exploring the Master of Religion and Public Life tonight. My name is John. I'm admissions officer here with HDS Admissions. I'm joined by a great panel, both of moderators and a panelist to talk about the MRPL. I'm going to start with a very brief introduction about HDS and the MRPL, go over a few key details, and then turn it over. So we're going to go ahead and get started right now. I'm going to share my screen. Bear with me just one second. So again, my name is John. I'm admissions officer here with HDS Admissions. I've been with HDS for about 5.5 years. Harvard Divinity School was founded in 1816 and is the first divinity school in the United States and the most religiously pluralistic in the world. HDS educates students in the academic study of religion and in preparation for ethical leadership, religious literacy, and service-oriented, mission-driven work. Our vision here at HDS is to provide an intellectual home where scholars from around the globe teach varieties of religion in service of a just world at peace. Briefly talk about the MRPL. We'll go into much more detail as we progress throughout this session, but the MRPL, the Master of Religion in Public Life, is designed for experienced professionals in primarily, but not exclusively, secular arenas whose work is focused on having a positive social impact and who are inspired by a vision of just peace. By the numbers, this is a 1-year full-time degree. There are no online or remote options for the MRPL, so it does require local residency. There are 2 required courses for the degree, 1 final project requirement, and an oral examination or public presentation. I will mention also the MRPL is not eligible for institutional financial aid through HDS. If you have questions about that, please put those in the chat or direct them to admissions, and I'll provide you with some information in just a bit. Very briefly, in terms of the application for the MRPL, our timeline down there at the bottom, the application is currently open. It will close on January 9th. In late January, early February, the admissions office will start sending out interviews, and admissions decisions are all released at the same time in mid-March of 2025. In terms of application components, we do require the application form itself. We do require both a statement of purpose and a project proposal for the MRPL. You're required to submit a resume, unofficial academic transcripts, 3 letters of recommendation, a writing sample, TOEFL or IELTS test results, if applicable, and we can talk about that through the admissions email address. And again, the interview, which is issued by invitation in late January through early February. If you do have questions, please stay connected with HDS Admissions. That QR code at the top of the screen will link you to our Connect form online. You can reach out to us directly, especially for questions about application components or application deadlines at admissions@hds.harvard.edu. If you have a question for a current student, you can reach out to ask_students@hds.harvard.edu. Please think about following us on our HDS Admissions blog or on our Instagram at Harvard Divinity. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our panelists and to the moderators. Our primary moderator will be Terrence Johnson, Charles G. Adams Professor of African American Religious Studies, Diane Moore, Associate Dean for Religious and Public Life, Lecturer in Religion, Conflict, and Peace, Senior Fellow at the Center of the Study of World Religions is here as well.
And our student panelists, Kendall Ciesmeyer, Jarrett Hill, Stephanie T., and Jeremy Barber. And with that, I'm going to turn it over. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you so much, my friend John. Really appreciate it. Friends, welcome to this session. And before I begin, I want to acknowledge the founder and the brains behind this incredible program. Without Diane Moore, we would not be here today. And so I just want to first acknowledge you, Diane, and thank you so much for your just incredible ingenuity and the breadth that you bring to HDS and the infrastructure around the MRPL program. So thank you. So I want to begin just by saying, beginning in July, I have the great honor to take over as the director of the Religion and Public Life program at Harvard Divinity School, and really excited about building upon Diane Moore's incredible work. You know, what I can say is this is an amazing program. I'm still learning all the ins and outs, but I've worked on the committee before, and what I can say is that I don't know of any other any more rigorous program in 1 year that experienced professionals like yourselves can actually enter. And what's really unique about our program at the Divinity School is that, one, you have the incredible resources at Harvard Divinity School. I like to say that what makes this place so unique is that we're able to find incredibly bright people and give you tons of resources to build an incredible profile, but also to build upon the work that you're doing in the world. And secondly, I think we provide a really unique program in the study of religion, in part because this MRPL program provides a really a strong analytic component around giving you a language around understanding religion in the world, religion around justice and peace building, and around categories that are very clear around the different distinguishing religion in terms of faith, religious as an academic study, right, and religious in terms of how it builds community. And it's an amazing 1 year program. The people you will meet are incredible. And I think you will learn just as much from your classmates and from small cohort conversations as you will from your professors and from staff members. I'd also say, you know, you want to come to a place like the Divinity School in part because of the ways in which we give you so much academic freedom in terms of we want your backgrounds to play a huge role in terms of how you are reading the text. We believe that the text become alive and remain relevant in part because you're reading it and you're bringing in your wealth of professional background into the text. And as you're bringing your wealth of knowledge to the material, we actually will provide you with a set of sort of paradigms, as it were, to engage. And as I imagine, the goal is to have this sort of dialogical conversation with the text, right, with the cohort, and also with questions that are germane to your professional background. And through this collaboration, we really hope that, and in the past, it's been proven that our students walk away with incredible projects that really enrichen their work when they return home. And lastly, I say, you know, the Divinity School is amazing, and you also have the amazing resources of the university. And so we really encourage students who come to take advantage of the resources at the university and to really come with a sense of the people you'd like to have a conversation with. And there's so many people who come in and out of Harvard and in and out of Harvard Square that you will actually have probably a second education talking with friends at coffee shops and meeting and talking with distinguished guests who are coming to the university. So with that backdrop, I'm really excited to welcome you to this program and really excited to hear from our colleagues who are both in the program and those who have graduated. I'd like to, as it were, maybe pass the mic and have my colleagues here introduce themselves, and then we'll have a conversation. So I'd like to begin with Jeremy, and after you introduce yourself, share a brief bit about your background, then pass the mic to the next person.
The next person, meaning the next person on my screen or the next
Yes, on
person
your
in my
screen, on
head?
your screen. No, on your screen.
Steph, you're the next person on my screen, just so you know.
Okay, well then go to the next
So
person
Steph,
after that. Yeah.
my name is Jeremy Barber. I graduated from the MRPL program last May, I think. I work in Hollywood. I'm a partner at a talent agency. I continued working while I came to the Divinity School, and I transitioned from a career in politics to a career in movies because I thought that storytelling had the capacity to reach more people on a global transformational level and could create more positive change in the world than at that point I thought regulation and legislation could. And frankly, after 20 some years working at my job, I had run out of ideas and energy and felt that I needed to find new colleagues, new allies, new texts, and new ways to imagine how I applied storytelling in a transformational way. What I learned from Diane, who I was lucky enough to have guide me and invite me and oversee me, is uh, that the primary entity in need of reimagination and new energy and ideas was myself. And what began as an outward looking project and program became, I think, in the words of Harvard Divinity School, more cathartic and looking inside and looking at my own story and my own role as a storyteller, where in my current job, I service other storytellers. I'm an agent. And I had a transformational experience, which I will forever be grateful for. I will say the 1 year was what I could fit. If I could have had 3 years or 5 years, I would have. And what Diane admonished me at the beginning, I will say, is a year is a perilously short period of time to get your hands around all the nutrients that are available to you, both within the Divinity School and beyond. So it's a quick, deep plunge, but it's a remarkable program and opportunity, I think, both for the people who are admitted, but also for the Divinity School because they get access to people who might not be traditional graduate students. So that's what I'd say. And Steph, over to you. And I'm sorry if that was too long.
Hi, I'm Steph Tabashnik. It's great to be here. I'm a forensic psychologist and attorney. I work in the intersection of law, psychology, and neuroscience, and most of my cases involve people who've been kids who've been convicted of homicide and late adolescents who've been convicted of homicide. And in my other work, I'm a director of a neurolaw library that leverages neuroscience in cases involving juvenile justice. And then I also do some work in addictions. I'd say the common thread is people see me when they're in a lot of pain. And I'm in the MRPL program now, and I'll just stick to an introduction, but I will say that it's already been such a tremendous start to the year.
Jarrett, please.
All right. Kendall, I saw you getting ready to unmute. That was a good.
I was getting ready to say Steph Austin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jarrett Hill. I am a journalist and author and artist, and I moved here from Los Angeles, where I typically live. I've been here in the MRPL program since we started earlier in September. I tend to work on varying things that cover politics and pop culture. And I have a book that came out earlier this year called Historically Black Phrases. Among other things. I'm going to stop there and pass it over to Kendall.
Hi everyone, I'm Kendall Ciesmeyer, she, her pronouns. I am a MRPL in this class of 2025 with Jarrett and Steph. I, prior to coming to HDS, was at the ACLU for the past almost 5 years, hosting and producing the ACLU National Podcast. And prior to that, had been working in opinion journalism at the New York Times, and then a social justice publication called Mike that I think is now like a shell of itself. And so my work is very much at the intersection between storytelling and an impact. I think a lot of us share that commonality. And I just want to ditto to what has been said about the program. We started in September, and I already feel like so much is happening. And also it's going so fast. So really excited to be with you all today.
Great, thank you. It just feels very criminal not to have Diane say something. So Diane, can you just please say hello and just say, why this program? Because you're so instrumental to this. So please say something to the audience.
Well, thank you. I don't want to take much time. I want to say it's been an incredible privilege to help create the program along with my other faculty colleagues. And just to be clear, I'm retiring at the end of this year, and we are incredibly lucky to have Terrence Johnson step into the leadership of the Religion Public Life program, and particularly lead the MRPL program, which this session is focused upon. It's the privilege of being able to work with these remarkable people that you're meeting tonight and many others has been really a highlight of my long career, and it is an unusually special program in the sense that people come with a sense of deep vocation in relationship to their own professions, and who want to and have already been engaged in and want to continue to, for lack of or to be simplistic, to make the world a better place. What does it mean for us to rise to the challenges of these times and to do our parts, make our contributions to make a future more promising than the current present seems to be? So with that, I will just step back. I'm here tonight to just to answer questions that Terrence in his new role might not be able to, but otherwise it's just a joy to be in this circle. So thank you all.
Great. Thank you, Diane. I'm curious in terms of why religion and how did this program help with religious literacy? In part, I'm really surprised and actually astonished at how the students come in and within a matter of a month or two are already speaking in ways around religious literacy, around thinking about religion in very deep ways. I'm curious for people who are like, oh, I'm interested in Harvard, interested in religion, but still thinking in terms of, well, is it worth the investment? Why religion? And what did you actually gain from this program, with particularly around the language around religion and building a just world?
I can go. So I work in the criminal justice system and I'm really interested in issues of mass incarceration. And it was feeling like something was going on that wasn't being talked about. And part of that was like the religious influences, in particular Christianity and our criminal justice system. And I didn't feel like I had language to talk about that and understand that. And, already within less than 2 months, I feel like my knowledge of like not necessarily like religion in general, but even how to talk about religion has shifted and developed. And I wasn't sure what the program was going to be like. I wasn't sure, if I'd fit in, if it would, I don't have a Christian background, so I was wondering, oh my gosh, like, is that going to be okay? Um, and it's like a million times better than what I ever could have envisioned. And it's so cool being around people from like every religious tradition. It's such a pluralistic community. And I would say people coexist in a really beautiful way. And it's such a like loving, supportive community. And in the MRPL program, we're each doing things that are very unique. But I think what we share is like a commitment to understanding others and other perspectives, and also like I would say there's a kindness and a gentleness that is really beautiful in facilitating like open-hearted learning.
Thank you, Steph. Jeremy, coming from Hollywood and this idea of religion as a necessary component of storytelling, say more about that.
Well, and Diane knows this. I really couldn't share what I was doing with a lot of my colleagues because of the view of religion in general and sort of the complete disconnection in Hollywood from any spiritual or religious thinking. There is religious filmmaking and storytelling, but that's just like making stories about, African Americans or for women or Barbie. It's a silo, right? You go make a Christian movie because you know you can sell tickets. There's no thought to content. Um, Terrence, mine was a little bit more broadly. I came from an Episcopal background. I have a faith practice. So there was a component for me that was deeply important. And I'm going to circle back to something, but I was looking at the role of spirituality in community and the breakdown of community, in part through the modern technologies and the phone and apps, and how uh, a technology and an export that we are engaged with, which is storytelling, had come in many ways to break down and undermine community as opposed to reimagine and reassert it. And I was looking at it more from the side of a spiritual as opposed to a religious crisis, but my undertaking was very, very spiritual and thus by extension religious. And I think it is the role of storytelling to bring people together, to create empathy, and to lift people up. And I think that is something that was happening less and less through the Walt Disney Corporation and Netflix and the different kind of content we have chosen to make with sequels and derivatives. What I would come back to and what I was not anticipating, and both was a challenge and also ultimately an amazing opportunity. This is an academic program. So when you get in theories and methods, or you're sitting in the MRPL seminar and you're reading, you're not fake a graduate student. So you are immersed into the world of ideas and into the role of religion in shaping the current world we live in ways that amplified and deepened my thinking and also just challenged my brain. But I would say to anybody considering this program, it is an academic program, which is also its gift and its opportunity. And you get brought in the middle of your life and career to a deeply academic program, both in MRPL and beyond. But I was more interested in the spiritual component than the religious component per se, if that's a distinction. Maybe it's a distinction without a difference, Terrence. I don't know.
No, it's an interesting distinction we can talk about later, but I really want to stick with this idea around the world of ideas that you encounter. And I'm curious to hear from both Kendall and Jared in terms of how did you encounter the world of ideas, or how are you encountering, for Jared, the world of ideas? And explain what it's like to those in the audience in terms of the kind of the rigor, but also just, how did you, how are you, how did you, or and how are you adjusting?
I feel like this is a harder question for me than the previous one. Mostly because I had my like entire many of you who have some familiarity with the MRPL program, it's very project oriented. We all have a project to complete at the end of our year here, and I had a very constructed project and very clear articulation of what the problem I was after studying, and I very much just had 2-day, an hour-long meeting with Diane where my entire project really just like got tossed up in the air. And I think that's not, I actually heard that in this very session last year when I was listening in, that would happen. And so I think it's mostly that there's so much shifting underneath us when we're in this program, when we're asking these big questions, and when we're asking them alongside other people. And so I think for each of us, it's going to hit us in a different way. And I think for me, it's hitting me in a way of really needing to, instead of focusing on specifically just a religious context or studying a group of, my project orientation was around how do you translate social progressive policy to white Christians. And I think I realized at the end of the day that I needed to have a stronger foundation for myself in some of these like big theological questions. And so now that's all kind of changing. And some of that had to do with seeing Jarrett, who presented on his project literally last night in our session, and his articulation of how he's making this project not just applicable to other people, but very personal to him. And so there's this kind of two-pronged approach that we're kind of being asked. First, you know, what is religion, spirituality, God to us personally? And then also, what does religion mean and how does it impact different forces in society? So both of those questions are operating at the same time, and it's like very much this shifting ground. And that's all I can really say because I'm very much in transition.
Well, this is very helpful. I really want to hear from you, Jared, in terms of how are you sort of processing and handling, these big ideas.
Yeah, so I was walking home from class with a couple of classmates, and we were having conversations around like the language of being here. And I was like, if I hear another person say epistemological or ontological, I don't even know what that means. Right. That was kind of how we like were opening up the conversation because like I've heard so many words here that I'm like, I don't even use that word. What do you know what they just said? And like I'm Googling things all the time, but I'm also like, oh, but okay, I Googled and I do know what that means, or I do understand what they're talking about. And we are amongst divinity students and theology students. And so some of them speak a different language than we do, or we're coming in this not studying deep into specific religions always necessarily, but like taking a big picture look at religion as well. And so to your earlier question, like why a religious education, for me, it was interesting to come because of the multi-religious nature of this institution. And I come in having grown up very Baptist and in the Black church, and I was really interested in God and religion more than I was interested in studying Christianity. We were in a presentation yesterday in the library, and the researcher said, I grew up Catholic, so I don't know anything about the Bible, but I can tell you about this, that, and the other. And I was like, yeah, I've never like studied Christianity. I've just been like living and baking in it, if you will, and kind of like forming within it. And so being here and approaching religion from an academic perspective has just been such a different way to think about it. And it's actually been really, really affirming for me in ways that I think had I known they would be happening, I would have expected them to feel disorienting. You mentioned theories and methods. It's one of the required classes that we take. And it's been so interesting being in theories and methods and speaking about religion from an academic perspective as opposed to as a parishioner, where as a parishioner, we speak about religion in very certain terms, right? We know this about God and we feel that, and we speak very certain. And in class, it's like, well, actually, we need to think about this a little bit more, right? Or let's approach this from a different perspective. And that's been really, really interesting for me and kind of opening me a little bit to be able to think about things a little differently. And it's been great.
I just might add that everybody's project is evaporated and then reconstitutes itself as a kissing cousin. And I think it's part of the methodology, but I think every single person in our cohort ultimately let go of their project and then came back to it. And Kendall, the people who had the most fully baked projects had the hardest time letting go. So they were the last to let go. So at some level, if you've let go early, congratulations. But I do think there's a dialectical something where whatever we come in with, we are tasked with giving up or reimagining, in part based on what is added to our container or our thoughtfulness about our project. So congratulations on figuring out so early to give up yours. That's amazing.
Thank you
We
for
can't. No, go ahead, Kendall. Oh,
Oh, I was just saying thank you.
Well, and
so
Terrence, can I just say to that
oh,
point, like
please.
we get warned coming in, your project will very likely change, right? And we get told that from when we submit our proposal in the application, when we're coming through like this process, like your project will change, your project will probably change. And I think when you come in with this idea of I want to do this, I'm coming in looking at the Black church and especially how queer and trans people have shown up in that space, and more specifically how we've been really instrumental in constructing it, but also oftentimes removed and erased from it. So I'm like approaching this and thinking about like I could do this, I could do that. And I was saying it in my presentation last night to the cohort, like, so I had an idea and Diane was like, no, that's not quite what it should be, right? And kind of reined and scaled it back a little bit. And so I'm like re-envisioning it, but it's a really important piece of it. And I remember Diane saying to us early, like, your project should change when you get here, right? You're going to be having conversations you've never had. You're going to be learning things you've never learned. You're going to be reading books you've never even heard of from people you might not have ever thought about. And so it should inform the way that you're thinking about this. And I took that to heart because it's definitely been true for me.
Can I just jump in just to clarify something? Thank you for these comments. One of the things I say for the people who are considering the program, you're all experienced professionals. The program is geared toward people who have established themselves in their professional lives. So you have expertise that we are excited to learn from you about. But the difference between our program and say taking a year off is that if you can do your project without coming to the Divinity School, then you should just do your project. The Divinity School is here to what we offer people who come is a way to think about religion, the study of religion, and that your project is going to change, because if it doesn't change, then you probably shouldn't have come, because we're then not doing our job, or you're not interested in what we have to offer. So that's the idea, is that you bring this expertise and we share our expertise here at the Divinity School, which is the study of religion. And then that beautiful combination is what then coalesces into a project that, again, will change from your application to your execution. So,
And if I just might add, Terrence, to that, what I realized is if you engage with the program fully, you will be at the beginning of your project when you leave, not the end. And what it will be is you will have taken the seed of an idea and now you'll have a sapling or a tree. But at some point, and Diane, I don't want to undermine what the work you're going to do, but you're not expected to have the final work product at the end of a 9-month period of time where you're pouring all of this information in, not only from the Divinity School, but the Kennedy School if you choose, or the law school, or anything you can imagine. And I think because we're high-level professionals who come in and we're successful, we're very results oriented. And I think part of what you get to do is let go of that results oriented thinking and say, here is a space where you get to reimagine, learn, add ideas, add allies, uh, and really learn to think anew. I mean, that's if you ask me, what you haven't, but I always tell people, because again, in Hollywood, they don't understand the divinity school part at all. They just think I'm either in a midlife crisis or left the plantation. I've learned to listen. I really learned to listen. I learned to be present. I learned to strip away my expertise. I learned to be open to different ideas and different processing. I learned to think differently before I spoke. I learned to sit in circle. And those are skills which are also life skills that are endemic to the place that Ralph Waldo Emerson helped imagine. And that's just in the soil, and it's in the faculty, and it's in the students, and it's in this amazing student body. And, I got to be there at a very, very tumultuous time last year with what was going on, and the way the Divinity School population held together and were allies throughout everything that happened was just exceptional and so inspiring. And it's a model for a pluralistic community going forward, because no matter where you were, what your religion were, you were in community. So I just want to say that.
No, that's powerful, Jeremy. And I'm curious, can you guys say more about this idea of someone used this sort of metaphor, the ground shifting underneath you? Because it seems like so much of what's so unique about the Divinity School is the degree to which sort of intellectual, like life and intellectual rigor are kind of woven into this MRPL program. And I'm curious in terms of how you experience this idea that you're coming here and literally you're being forced to re-examine these preconceived notions, but also being forced to really think in a way that maybe you haven't in a while because you're already so successful. And now we're asking you to engage another set of texts. What is that like? And can you share that what it's like to the audience? Because I think that's so unique and so many people want that experience, but don't have the opportunity to spend a year to kind of really be very thoughtful about their professional lives.
I can jump in here. I think for me, I needed this personally. I needed it professionally in a way, being at the ACLU and watching just the attack after attack after attack after attack on the most marginalized people in America, stemming from a specific cohort of religious people, and feeling, I had grown up in a very white evangelical Christian town outside of Chicago, and I needed to think about these questions that existed within me prior to just even the ACLU chapter of my life, but I really needed to carve out a space and time and place. And to me, this was like almost a gift to myself to, I think, a lot of us talk about, we're moving to Cambridge for a year. A lot of us are leaving our work full time. It's definitely a huge thing to be engaged in. And I think that to me, it felt like a really crucial time in my life to be doing this questioning, and a really crucial time in America to be having these questions, because these questions are not asked in my daily, like in my work life. No one's asking these questions. We're calling people names, we're putting labels on individuals, we're not engaging in nuance or dialogue or questioning of really much at all. It has become a very polarized black and white kind of society, especially within politics and advocacy and media. And so for me, it was just like I had to be doing this work, and this was the place and time to be doing it. And I think the ground is shifting underneath me because I was ready to have my ground shifted. And so I think that's also a discernment process. Like, is this the right time for you to be asking these big questions of yourself and open to big answers? And as far as the manifestation of your project, like, will it lead you to something new that you, as Dan said, uh, could not have found on your own. I think that those are really good questions to be asking yourself when thinking about entering this space. Yeah, for me, it was just, it felt like a very clear need of mine. So that's why I decided to take the plunge and apply and then hope and pray that it worked out.
I love to thank you, Kim. I love to hear from Steph as well in terms of your experience so far, and especially given the work you're doing, which can be very taxing. How are you finding the courses in terms of, again, challenging your thoughts and challenging how you see the world of incarceration?
Yeah, it's been really powerful. I think like Kendall, like I felt like I needed this on like a soul level. Like it felt like I was feeling more and more burnt out at work, even though I felt like my job was really meaningful and I love my job. And I was ready to think about things differently. And it was clear to me, like, obviously our current mass incarceration system is not working. And the ways that I know how to think about mass incarceration were coming up against a fence. Like I wasn't able to like go further and like thinking about what else could be different and what the paradigm shift is. And I think this school and this program in particular are really good places to think about. Like, I mean, we talk a lot about moral imagination and possibilities that like we didn't see originally. And I think the classes are phenomenal. I mean, I went through a doctorate, a postdoc, and then law school, and I've gotten more out of this, last 2 months than I have, and I would say all of those years of schooling on a soul level and on a like perspective, what's really important level. So it's been, I'd say, tremendous. And I am, working while I'm in this program. I'm not working full time, but I think for me has that has been a good match. Although I do think it's good to like definitely pare down work because it is a really demanding program, but it's been a really phenomenal experience that I'm tremendously grateful for.
Thank you so much. I'm wondering, Jerry, can you say more in terms of how, so far, say, theories and methods, how the course is sort of challenged, even how your understanding of the Black church, right? You made a great sort of statement earlier, like, yeah, people make certain assumptions about Blackness and about the Black church, and I know so much about it. I'm curious in terms of, I know it's only been a couple of weeks, but have you found that the course has already, or Diane's course already challenging certain sort of categories or presuppositions you had about the Black church?
Yeah, well, I spoke about certainty earlier, and I feel like I've probably told this story to 2 dozen people already whenever I talk about theories and methods. I remember on our first day, our professor's name is Annette Reed, and she came in and she's kind of giving us the layout of what the class is. And she kind of casually mentions, by the way, take a couple of moments and write down your definition of religion. And then we'll come back and we'll chat. And everyone kind of does. And then we spent an hour and a half talking about the definition of religion, right? And I was so taken aback by the question because I didn't know that this was a question in the way that we discussed it and that it didn't have such an easy answer. But of course, as you're thinking about a multi-religious institution with people coming from every corner of the world to be in this room, this is a class with 150 students in it, in a lecture hall. Like, of course, we all have different answers, right? And of course, we think about this in different kinds of ways. And it was the very first day of class, and I remember coming out of that class and thinking, like, oh, okay. Like I didn't know that I needed to really think about this for a little bit and like and interrogate my answer and really consider how you answered it incredibly differently. The person sitting next to me in orientation had moved from Pakistan 2 days before, right? The people next to me were coming from Georgia. I'm moving from Los Angeles. We have people moving from different countries and different states and people who are from this area. And so like we have so many different perspectives coming into the room, and when we're just answering this question on the very first day of theories and methods, it really kind of shook me. And one of the things that, as I was talking about with certainty, certainty is a thing that I have as a kid. I remember thinking to myself, like, we sound really sure about some of these things, but I don't get that part, right? Or that doesn't make sense to me, but I'm 12, so nobody really cares what I think. And I'm not encouraged to ask questions. As a Christian, we're not like asking questions of the pastor during the sermon. We are taking it in, receiving it as law in some kind of way, oftentimes, and then moving on and going into our lives. And there's so much doctrine, there's so many ideas and ways that we approach these conversations about our faith, about our religion, about our God, or in the different things that we might call God. It's been very interesting to me in that way because I didn't expect to be asking some of these questions, and I didn't expect to get some of the answers that I've been getting. So it's been really, really incredible for me in that way. And Kendall talked earlier, Kendall and Steph talked about like feeling like this was like a soul thing. And like for myself, I left all the jobs that I had at the in December. And I was while I was applying for this, and I was like, if I get in, great. And if I don't, we gonna have to figure something else out. Right. But like I was leading an organization, I was number one on a call sheet, I was a professor at USC, and like I was like tired of journalism in the way that I had been doing it, and it had been affecting me in a way that I couldn't really shake. I was tired in a way that a weekend off would not serve. There was not a nap long enough that was going to do it for me. And being here, I keep saying to people like, this is exactly what I needed, and I didn't know how to articulate exactly what I was looking for when I was coming into this program. But being here, I'm like, this is it, right? This is what I was looking for.
Great, thank you. It's powerful. And I'm curious in terms of building upon that, Jeremy, what piece of advice would you give to people who are thinking about the MRPL program in terms of their own professional development, in terms of, trying to figure out if this is the right program for them?
That's a great question, Terrence, and you're a great leader of conversation. So MRPL will be lucky to have you come into the guide because so much of how we learn is how we share our work and are guided in conversation. And Diane is an expert at it and helped us all learn how to help each other with the projects, and our projects all deepened and grew. You know, Jarrett, Kendall, Steph, close to me, I didn't give up my job and I couldn't give up my job. And for me, the point was not giving up my job, right? The point for me was to come get new allies, new ideas. I also was in a crisis of the soul. I used to joke that, I could feel my soul dying, and I'm an undertaker of hopes and dreams as a Hollywood agent. But I'm still in battle, and I was working on issues for the unhoused and inner city kids, and I still believe in the transformational power of storytelling. So for me, I needed this while I was still in combat. So it was like on the field training, right? You're in the foxhole and someone's teaching you to fly a drone at the same time. So I undertook keeping my career going full time, and my career was at an apex while doing this. And it was very, very challenging. And I think at some level I underserved the opportunity. But again, my version of it was I was coming in to amplify my current position and not pivot away from it. Uh, and what I would come back to is advice, and I took a class in forgiveness. Like, Hollywood, there's no forgiveness, right? It was Matt Potts. He's amazing, right? I took with Stephanie Paulsell a class in Virginia Woolf. She was the one author I could never figure out. And I learned how to read Virginia Woolf in a spiritual class. And it was like water in the desert. But I think the challenge is because we are fully baked professionals, often with families, often with pets, often with obligations. I think the more space you can create to really drink in this opportunity. And Diane would say, I was impressed that I would fly back and forth across country, but I'm worried you're not getting everything you would need. Again, what I needed was tactical. I was coming in to weaponize and advance and accelerate my current work. So it was very, very specific. But I would say the more runway you can clear, the more space you can create for this thing. Harvard and Harvard Divinity School and Harvard Yard and Cambridge are such a resource enriched filled world. And I became friends with people at the business school and at the School of Public Health who are now allies in the fight in Los Angeles against homelessness. So I would say the more you can get buy-in and the more you can permit buy-in and create as much space as possible for this lightning quick project, the more you will get from it. This is how I could do it, and it was tactical. And it works too if you do it that way. But my suggestion is this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. and you create as much space as humanly possible to have it. That would be my real advice.
Well, it doesn't sound like you were shortchanged yourself, because the examples you're giving are pretty incredible. I mean, you clearly, this place made an impact on you. And I'm curious, Jared, if you could just say a little briefly, what gave you the courage to apply? You said you're at the top of your career, you're teaching at USC, a new book just came out. Again, why this program? What pulled you here?
Um, over the summer, it occurred to me it might be midlife crisis because I turned 40 in April. Like, let's just be honest about that. But I have been wanting, I had started thinking about maybe getting a religious education. And a friend of mine was over at my house for dinner, and like in the middle of conversation, it came up that he had gone to Harvard Divinity School, and he did not strike me as a divinity school type of person. And I was like, you did what? And so I was like asking more questions, but I was trying to figure out like what I was going to be doing next. And as he suggested Harvard Divinity School, I had so many reasons why this could not be the right thing for me. And I was like, certainly not at Harvard, and Divinity School sounds like a lot. But I've been Black, gay, and Christian my entire life. And those three things don't always align in the ways that I feel like they should. And I've spent so much time, trying to reconcile my faith and my sexuality, and those things not working together, or seeming disparate to so many people. And I wanted to get really clear. I wanted to get free, if you will. My essay that I submitted with my application was called "I'm Coming for Our Freedom," because I wanted freedom for myself, and I also wanted freedom for the community of people that I'm a part of, that I love, that I'm in community with day to day, that are people of faith, but are probably not in a church. Because the church hasn't welcomed them. I go back and forth with this language with a friend of mine about being welcome but not feeling at home, but feeling like, oh yeah, all are welcome, and then you get here and it's like, you don't say our name, you don't address us, there's no ministry for us, every message is heteronormative, and like that was really, really bothering me. And I wanted to come here and get really clear and solid on how I saw myself in faith and God and religion, and also figure out how I could use that education to be able to better the community that I'm a part of. I've spent many years as a journalist, telling stories about this and about various other things, but I wanted to figure out how to take that to the next level, and this was the best possible opportunity that came for me to be able to do that.
Thank you. I'm curious with you, Kendall, in terms of what advice would you give people who are considering the program?
I think that the program is really centered on people who already kind of have a little bit of that vocation mentality. They're already kind of asking themselves like, what is my role? What is my purpose? What am I doing here? These kind of like interesting big questions that we ask ourselves as people. And I feel like all of the folks in our cohort reflect that. And we're coming from extremely diverse spiritual backgrounds, extremely diverse industry backgrounds. I remember the first time when we were all gathering after we were accepted, and we introduced ourselves and talked a little bit about our project, and one of our MRPL cohort members said that he was going to be studying the ethics of AI. And I was like, what does that have to do with religion? Like, how does that, I'm coming from a very specific place thinking like, I'm gonna change white Christianity. Like there needs to be reform here. And he is studying the ethics of AI. And that was such a different perspective. And yet every single paper that we've read, and discussed in class have been so relevant to AI. And so, I think that I just mean to say and offer that because I think people are coming from extremely different places and spaces, and that you should not think of yourself as needing to be of any kind of religious orientation or any kind of religious background, but just someone who is like very interested in these these kind of questions, questions of ethics, questions of religion, questions of spirituality, questions of like existential questions. And yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that everyone has said is like your project that you pitch in the program will probably change, but it's good to have something solid to start with, because I don't think everything changes about it. And I yeah, I don't know. I mean, advice is very much, I think this place, this space, this program is very much what you make of it. And I think it's helpful to feel like you know your why, like, and to be clear on your why, even if that doesn't necessarily mean you're clear on your project. To be clear on your why you're kind of engaging at this time is really important. And yeah, I just think be ready for that time in your life where you might be in community with people who I don't know, like I think Steph said it so well, the tenderness of this group is such a special, the cohort, I don't think we've talked enough about that. The cohort is like so unbelievably special, and I think, you know, I feel so connected and grateful for the people that I'm amongst and that I'm learning from, and that feel like soulmates in a really like platonic way. Um but that part, to be in community with other people and to be vulnerable. I think this program asks you to be vulnerable and to lay some of that stuff down in a way that like Jeremy couldn't do that in his day job, or you know, it'd be unprofessional for Steph to do that with a client, but like this is your space and place to like kind of be raw and exposed. Um, and I think, you know, orienting yourself around that could be really important, and realizing the value that you have in your own personal situatedness and what you bring to bear to the program as well.
Oh, please, Jared.
Terrence, I just want to note, like, I'm coming from like a lot of leadership roles into into this cohort, and one of the things that has been amazing to me is getting to be incredibly curious. And I think we've kind of heard that from everyone's different perspectives, that like you work every day and you come in with a perspective. You have to be creative, or you're writing, or you're fighting against something, or you're whatever the things are that we're doing day to day. And like one of the things that I've loved the most and started getting excited about before I got here, and I've enjoyed since I've been here, is just getting to kind of come in and have a sense of wonder, and just to be a little bit in awe, right, of the information, of the educator that is in front of you, of the space that we're in, of the group that we're a part of, and the conversations that we get to have. I know that I've been saying quite a bit, like, we do a lot of reading. What I say, it's too much reading, not here, but I would say like there's a lot of reading to do. But then there's also a lot of discussion to have about that reading, and hearing so many different people's perspectives on the things that we're thinking about, talking about, engaging, has been something that I don't know how else I would have been able to have that experience, and has been incredibly valuable for me.
I just
That's powerful.
so
Oh, yeah, go ahead,
I
Steph.
was gonna say,
Yes.
going off of what Kendall, we actually call Kendall Kendi. So going off what Kendi and Jarrett said, I think like in terms of advice, if you have more questions than answers, then apply.
Wonderful. What I'm hearing, what I was fascinating is the idea, how do you're bringing in your head and your heart, right? There's this incredible rigor intellectually, but also I think Kendi said the soul work. And I'm curious, I know we only have a few minutes left, but can you describe, Steph, what's a typical day like? Because we've heard all these great phrases and all these incredible courses, but for a professional who hasn't been in school maybe in 5 years, what's a typical day like? Are you exhausted at the end of the day? Are you hanging out with people? Are you guys going to bars and debating all night? What's it like?
Well, I think I'm a little bit unique in that my work is sort of, I'm still working. And so I think
Okay.
I was just talking with John at admissions, and I think I figured out that I need to start my day at HDS and then do my forensic work. Otherwise I get a little bit burnt out, because HDS is what really invigorates me and makes me feel like hopeful and ready to like take on the work that I do. I would say like a typical day where we have 1 to 2 classes a day. There is a lot of reading, there's writing, but I think, you know, my highlight of the week is seeing my awesome MRPL cohort, and I get to hang out with Diane a fair amount, learning from her, which I call like my weekly therapy. So which I'm joking about. So I think like mainly it's a lot of just like learning from people. And I would say like a lot of the students who are, you know, in MDiv and MTS programs are younger, and some of the wisest people I've met are 22 or 23 years old. So getting a chance to do some of the external stuff, there's, you know, groups that you can join. I'm in a Here and Now group where we sit every week for an hour and just talk about our spiritual development. There's 4 of us, and like they're in their early 20s and so incredibly wise. So I think every day is different, but the continuity is I learn something new every day. My perspective shifts just a tiny bit every day, and there's just a wonderful sense of community.
Great, thank you so much. I know we're approaching 6 o'clock, so I want to invite John back into the room. But just really want to thank our panelists for this incredible conversation. I learned so much, and I even grew more excited about the program listening to all these incredible stories. And just again, very grateful that Diane had the vision and the perseverance to really fight for this program and to help create it. And I just want to encourage the people who are listening and watching to really consider the program. It's an amazing institution. And as you can see here, amazing set of cohort you will join. So
Can I say one
thank
thing?
you. Oh, please, of course.
Just that if I remember being in this position and wanting more answers and having more questions even after this conversation, I know for myself, and I don't know for I'm assuming for Steph, for Jarrett, for Jeremy, like we're available. If any people want to ask more questions, like find us on the internet, and we would love to talk to any people about anything else if they didn't get enough of this. And I don't know if they have questions about their application. Someone did that for me and it was really helpful. So I just wanted to offer it.
I second.
Third.
Great. We are right at time. I know there's one question in the chat we didn't get a chance to answer, but if you want to send that over to admissions@hds.harvard.edu, we can try to answer it there for you, provide you with some additional information. Otherwise, I really want to thank both moderators and our panelists for tonight's event. We'll have this up on our events website within the next couple of days. If you have any questions at all, please again reach out to admissions@hds.harvard.edu. With that, I wish you all a good night and thank you very much for attending.